Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Ravin. Good to see you. Good morning,
Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Adefemi. Good morning, Ayo. How are we doing?
I didn't get the memo.
Yes.
Aww.
We're on the same page tomorrow.
Yeah.
All righty. Good morning to you all. Let's take a look at some stories happening around the world. We'll start with some unfortunately devastating news. 33-year-old Olympic athlete Rebecca Cheptegei has died days after being doused in petrol and set on fire by a former boyfriend, Ugandan officials have said. The 33-year-old marathon runner who competed at the Paris Olympics had suffered extensive burns after Sunday's attack, which reports say led to multiple organ failure. The authorities in northwest Kenya, where Cheptegei lived and trained, said she was targeted after returning home from church and reportedly in front of her children. Now, a report filed by a local administrator alleged the athlete and her former partner had been arguing over a piece of land. Cheptegei, who was a decorated athlete, finished 44th in the marathon at the recent Paris Olympics, but she also won gold at the World Mountain and Trail Running Championships in Chiang Mai, Thailand in 2022. Unfortunately, Rebecca's death comes 2 years after the killings of fellow East African athletes Agnes Tirop and Damaris Mutua, whose partners were both identified as the main suspect in both cases by authorities. Moving on now, and Colin Gray, who is the 54-year-old father of the suspect who is believed to be involved or responsible for that shooting over in Georgia earlier this week. His father is facing 4 charges of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of second-degree murder, and 8 counts of cruelty to children, says the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Authorities have charged his son, Colt, who is 14 years old, with 4 counts of murder, and they say they do plan to prosecute him as an adult. His first court hearing is due on Friday, this morning. And lastly, a suspicious person was shot dead by Munich police near the Israeli consulate in Munich, over in Germany, in what authorities say they believe was a planned terrorist attack. The city's police force says its officers deployed to the scene encountered an armed 18-year-old suspect and engaged him in a shootout. The suspect was an Austrian citizen living in Austria who did not have permanent residence in Germany. Those are our stories, my friends. Again, not the most positive ones, starting with the unfortunate loss of Rebecca Cheptegei, the arrest of Colt Bryson's father, and then, of course, what we're seeing over in Europe as it pertains to terrorism. Your thoughts, Mumbai?
Absolutely terrible, especially because that attack that took place in Germany came at the 50-year anniversary of the Munich Olympics massacre, which, of course, we know is when a group of terrorists, I believe they were believed to be Palestinians, decided to take Israeli athletes hostage at the Olympic Games. And it was massive because I believe that was the first time in history that a live hostage situation was televised and broadcast live to the world. It ended unfortunately, but it took me back to a theory. I can't remember who the theory is by, but it is a Russian economist and historian who came up with this theory that history happens in 50-year cycles. And it was quite profound to me because even if I look at some of the things happening here in Nigeria, all around the world, you date back to about 50 years ago, and you see that it was similar issues, especially around sort of people relations and you know, racism and xenophobia.
Interestingly enough, but it's probably not the theory you're referring to, but Huntington's paradigm, the clash of civilization, also talks about this thing, about how inevitably the world will cascade into chaos because of all of these different civilizations and issues that we're seeing in the world. So yes, I do agree with you.
So, you know, terrible to see that, and we just need to be aware that every 50 years, history does have a pattern of repeating itself.
Okay, the incident in Munich, you are referring to the 1972 Olympics, when a group of Palestinians under the umbrella of the Black September organization, tried to cause trouble. But the German authorities have established that this 18-year-old Austrian, that they cannot establish the motive. And although the incident occurred close to a Nazi museum and close to the Israeli consulate, that, the target, there's no proof that the target was the Israeli consulate, but that German authorities have an obligation to protect the consulate. Now, as for the incident in Georgia, Colt Gray and Colin Gray. Now, the father is being charged for attempted murder and 4 count charges of, assault and all of that, because he purchased the AR rifle for his gun, for his 14-year-old son, as a holiday present. So that's why he's involved in it. So there is a question here about parenting, about parenthood. Now, the boy is in custody now, but his trial will not be until he's 17, and he will be, charged as an adult. Why? Because the law in Georgia says that if you commit a crime between the ages of 13 and 17, you will be treated as an adult. Now, the victims have been identified, 2 students and 2 teachers, one of whom was celebrating a birthday on the very day, which makes it very sad. Cheptegei in Kenya. Now, she bought land to be close to, some of our colleagues for training purposes there in Kenya. Now, the quarrel between her husband and herself was over that land and the house, according to her parents. So you see this thing about property between 2 persons. But this does not justify Mr. Dixon in Diema, going to douse the woman with petrol and, killing her. He's guilty of murder, and it's good he's still in the hospital, because he suffered burns too, and he should not be allowed to escape. It's a tragedy, because who now is going to take care of the 2 children that this woman left behind? Dixon Diema is a criminal, and he should be treated as such.
It is a tragedy. Femicide has come up in the last few days, especially not just in Kenya where this happened, even though she's a Ugandan athlete, but also here in Nigeria, and I believe we'll be talking about that later. It highlights and it puts a spotlight on that conversation that hasn't gone away, but for a lot of times, maybe just because of cultural practices or the way that women are perceived, we haven't really brought that back on the table. So I'm hoping that this will trigger reactions, especially to ensure that women in that part of the world and around the African continent are better protected. But to be honest, it's a crime of passion. It's, between 2 partners where things went sour and unfortunately resorted to one of them being dead and the other in critical condition in hospital. But in Georgia, very sad story. Yesterday when we talked about this, I did say that more investigation should be done, and let's see the role that parenting or his father played in this. And I'm glad that now more information has emerged. What's even very sad is that was the first day of Colt stay in school. He had just moved. His parents are going through a divorce, and so his dad had mentioned that had affected him greatly. Beyond that is that they had investigated his account, Discord account, and then his name on Discord was the name of a weapon in Russia, even though he was named after a weapon. So code gray. So it's so many things that didn't go right. Then when he was younger, his dad used to take him along with him to go hunting, deer hunting, exposed him to that kind of life. So there are many things, and if America is going to deal with its gun crime issues, especially in schools with young people, they must investigate the reasons why, and even, and put a spotlight on parenting, how you can. That's why sometimes when social services come in and swoop in on the family, people are quick to say, oh, don't do that. But there are some parents who don't deserve to be parents, and that's the truth. And it's very sad. Right. Now, 4 people have lost their lives in such tragic circumstance.
Understood. As we mentioned yesterday, police had investigated and spoken to his parents and to him himself 1 year ago because of messaging. So it's very unfortunate to see how this has unfolded now. Let's move on to some newspaper headlines across the globe. We'll begin here in Nigeria with This Day newspaper. And This Day is leading with the NNPCL, which says it is working to resolve supply shortfalls and has blamed fuel scarcity on a multitude of issues on foreign exchange, illiquidity, distribution challenges, and also the need to balance imports with existing debts. This Day's article goes on to quote Executive Vice President of Downstream Operations at the NNPCL, Dapo Shegun, who during his interview on Arise News says a significant challenge in the market was the reluctance to allow prices to be determined by market forces. Let's move on to the New Telegraph. The New Telegraph is reporting also on this ongoing fuel scarcity issue befalling Nigeria, and its front page reports on Minister of State Petroleum Resources, Heineken Lokoburi, who's had a meeting with Vice President Shettima, as well as Nuhu Ribadu, who we know is Nigeria's National Security Advisor, and he has promised the availability of fuel this weekend. Punch also is tied into this NNPCL and fuel scarcity issue. It leads its paper, The Punch leads the paper with Dangote, with it saying that the NNPCL says that it's tying Dangote's petrol price to the Forex rate. The NNPCL says it will lift petrol from the Dangote refinery on September 15th, but also confirms other factors, as I already mentioned when we were discussing the front page of This Day. Let's move on to some slightly different news now. And The Guardian leads with a look at Nigeria's construction industry. And it says, during its article, that skilled manpower shortages due to a reverse in migration as foreign artisans from neighboring countries such as Benin Republic are leaving Nigeria due to this weakening Naira situation, as well as the fact that most young people in Nigeria are choosing not to train to become artisans in this construction industry. And they say that those factors have contributed to a worsening of the construction industry here in Nigeria. The Vanguard, however, features some updates on FOCAC, and it reports, as you've already mentioned at the beginning of the show, this Africa-China partnership and how President Tinubu says it has reached $280 million. President Tinubu also went on to emphasize the importance of global collaboration in achieving shared progress and prosperity. Let's take a look at some African papers now. And the Daily Nation of Kenya, its front page leads with impunity. That's literally the headline there. And this time, it's focusing on Acting Inspector General of Police, Gilbert Masengeli, who the paper says has snubbed court orders 6 times over the disappearance of 3 men who are also pictured on the front page of the paper. They say that the acting IG joins a list of government officials who defy legal directives, including the handling of protesters and the cessation of abductions. Staying with African newspapers, the Daily Monitor of Uganda takes a very interesting insight into the plight of people living with disabilities in Uganda. The paper says 12.4% of the population have a disability, and 22% of unemployed Ugandans also live with a disability. So a very interesting insight there. And then lastly, if we take a look at the Daily Telegraph of the United Kingdom, it is reporting that prisoners in the UK could spend some of their sentences in Estonia. It's the latest idea to tackle overcrowded prisons in the United Kingdom. And further, Germany says that it may use the now kind of unused UK Rwanda facilities for its own migrants. You'll remember that that was a huge sticking point pre-election, the Conservative Party wanting to take illegal migrants out of the United Kingdom, put them in these centres in Rwanda. Labour government has not put that through, and Germany says that it may well use those facilities for its own illegal immigrants. So that's what I have for you on our papers.
All right, very quickly I'll go with African papers. Daily Nation, the Kenyan Acting Inspector General of Police. This is deplorable. This is disgusting. His crime, well, let's not call them crimes. However, his charges that he needs to answer for are the fact that there were 3 young men abducted in an area of Nairobi 2 weeks ago. Right. Now, let's talk about the issue of abductions. Abductions have been prevailing since the mass protests that took place with the young people in Kenya. There were abductions. There were people who were killed in the middle of the night. There were mass graves found. So much happened during that protest. And now the courts are trying to unearth what happened and hold people responsible and accountable. And his excuse for not showing up in court for this 3rd time is that he was attending a workshop. Wow. And it's just, it's so deplorable. It's so unfortunate. And I hate to see African countries continue to toe this path. Now, in a sentence, with regards to UK wanting to send prisoners to Estonia, I think UK needs to remember that the colonial era is over and they need to stop, outsourcing their problems to other countries. Yeah.
All right, so talking about outsourcing their problems, first was Rwanda and now it's Estonia. So it just shows that despite the fact that there are now 2 different solutions from 2 different political parties and leaders, it's still the same. There's a challenge with overcrowding in their prisons, and the UK is grappling with more than they can handle. Now, with the recent happenings where the protest in the UK, which had more people sentenced and sent to prison, it didn't help matters. In fact, there are some conversations around the fact, and we talked about this here, that they're looking to release some prisoners earlier than their jail term, just so that they can free up the prisons. But they are freeing up the prisons to bring in more people into the system. So it really speaks to the justice system in the UK and how this will adversely impact it, because it would mean that some people who ought not to be let out, because some people who are on the sex offenders list are said to be going to be let out early as well. And that's a big concern to community members where they would be released back into. They're not ready to go back into society. So these are some of the challenges. So might it perhaps increase crime rates and then take them back into the problem that they're trying to resolve in the first place? So that's the challenge there. And then very quickly on the fuel price issue. Okay, well, we're no time. Dr. Batim.
Okay, quickly. The problem in the UK is overcrowding in the prisons. Yes. Estonia has very empty jails. And Estonia has offered to the UK to send their prisoners for a sum of £30 million. And the expectation is that that will shore up the revenue, public revenue in Estonia. The other side of the story is Germany, now saying it will use facilities that have been provided in Rwanda for illegal asylum seekers, and British taxpayers are saying, why would they use our facilities in Rwanda? But, the more urgent side of it is the political side, with the conservatives saying, you see, Kestama was wrong. But Kestama, from day one, said the Rwanda asylum plan was a gimmick. And people are saying, well, maybe the decision to scrap it was a bit, foolish in terms of description. But the subject that I really want to talk about is France, where a new prime minister has been appointed by President Macron. His name is Michel Barnier, 73-year-old, former Brexit negotiator. And, the Constitution says the president has a right. So it's not as if Parliament is going to go against him. But Parliament, can decide to pass a vote of no confidence in him. So what it will require will be broad-based party support. Already the leftists who upstage the party of Marine Le Pen, are saying they are going to block him. They will find every way to block, but they don't have the majority of 289 in the French parliament. Interestingly, Jean-Marie Le Pen says, look, the person that has been chosen is, at least fits one of the requirements. And he is saying, that is Barnier, who seems to be a safe choice. He's saying that, look, what is the job of a prime minister? He says the job of the prime minister is that he should tell the truth about debt, truth about education. And that his first objective is to address all the grievances of the people and try to unite people. But we'll see further developments in France. Macron has played a fast one on the left, and he will have a say in the cabinet. And he will be able to protect his pro-business reforms while having a conservative from the Les Républicains, as his prime minister.